Okay, so we give him 2 minutes. People can join in as we start talking. Let's begin with some introductions. First, Ms. Poland.
Hi, my name is Sherry Poland, and I'm the director of the Hamilton County Board of Elections.
Okay, I am Cole Williams. I am the Elimination of Prejudice chair for Pi Lambda Phi Fraternity.
My name is Jason Spinagle. I'm the president of Pi Lambda Phi and of College Republicans.
I'm Grace Abdelnour. I'm the president of Young Americans for Liberty.
I'm Brianna, and I'm the communications director for UC College Democrats.
My name is Brendan. I'm the president of Young Americans for Freedom.
Okay, I believe that is everyone, yes? Julius, did you go?
I did not, sorry. I'm Julius Freeman. I'm the president of We the People. I'm going to fix the sliding so it's not so bad, but thank you for having me.
Okay, so our first section is going to be on the voting process, and then specifically beginning with registering to vote. So these questions are all going to be for Ms. Poland, and then we're going to have each of the club representatives come back at the end with any questions. If anybody has any questions at all during the entire session, go ahead and put them in the chat, and then we will be sure to get to them at the end. Okay, so when is Ohio's deadline to register to vote?
It is fast approaching. Ohio's deadline to register to vote is this Monday, October 5th. The Board of Elections office will be open until 9 p.m. that day to accept the hard copy registration forms, or people can register to vote online. They have to do that by 11:59 p.m. on October 5th.
Okay, so where do you find the deadline to register if you are not a resident of Ohio?
Yes, I would recommend going to either that state's Secretary of State website or directly to the county that the person is living in, that Board of Elections website, or simply give them a call.
All right.
Because registration deadlines do differ from state to state.
What information does someone need when they are looking to register to vote?
Yes, well, they just simply need to provide their name, their current address, form of ID, their driver's license number, the last 4 digits of their social security number, and their signature.
Okay, very easy. Can you register to vote online in addition to in person?
In Ohio, yes, that is true. You can register online or hard copy form if someone does not have access to the internet. I will say registering online is the most convenient way, obviously, but there's a number of other ways you can obtain a registration form. Any local Bureau of Motor Vehicles, the public library, you can come here in person to our board office in Norwood.
Is one option better than another versus online or filling out a paper ballot?
No, I think it's, whatever the voter's more comfortable with. Online, like I said before, it's a little bit more convenient. It's kind of, instantly you're registering, to vote versus filling out the hard copy form and then either mailing it to the board or dropping it off to the board or one of those designated agencies. I mentioned before the Bureau of Motor Vehicles and the public library. Those are designated agencies. So it's not just that you can pick up a form there, you can leave the form with them, and they are under legal obligation to turn those into the Board of Elections.
Okay, once someone is registered to vote, what are the next steps to prepare themselves for getting ready for the election?
Sure, several steps. One is the voter should look in the mail for something called an acknowledgement card. So every time we have a new registered voter in Hamilton County, or if a voter updates their address or had a change in name and they update that with us, we send what's called an acknowledgement card. It's a postcard letting the voter know we've received and processed your registration. You are registered in Hamilton County. And it also has the voter's polling place that their precinct is assigned to, where they would vote on election day. So they want to make sure they receive that acknowledgement card. I also encourage voters to go on our website. If it's been a while since you voted, there are people who only vote in presidentials. Go onto our website, check your registration status, make sure that it's up to date, that we have your current address and we have your, if you've had a change of name, as I mentioned, that all that information is updated. And they can do that online on our website, or they can call us to get that information. And once they've made sure that their registration information is up to date, the next thing is they should make a plan to vote and how they wish to cast their ballot, because we're fortunate in Ohio that we have 3 ways for a voter to cast their ballot. They can vote early by mail, or they can vote early in person at our Board of Elections office. That begins Tuesday, October 6th. We also begin mailing ballots on Tuesday, October 6th, or they can choose to vote at their neighborhood polling place on Election Day. So, but we are encouraging voters. It's a common theme among elections officials and organizations like the League of Women Voters. Make your plan and follow that.
Okay. So I'm sure that lots of people have made it to the polling place on the day of the election, and there's been either a race or a referendum on the ballot that they weren't expecting. How do you know who or what will be on your ballot?
Absolutely. That's a very good question. We have posted to our website a sample ballot. So a voter can go onto our website and they can just type in their address, because the type of ballot you receive is all based on where you live, so that you're voting on the candidates that will represent you in your districts, and so that you're voting on the questions and issues that will affect your community. So it's all based on your address. So you can go onto our website. We have Find My Sample Ballot. It's on our homepage. Click on that, put in your address, and your sample ballot will pop up, a PDF, and you can print that and look it over and do your research on the candidates and issues and decide how you want to vote. And you could even go ahead and mark it and bring it with you as a guide when you come to vote if you want. And again, if you do not have access to the internet or to a printer, we can provide a sample ballot to you by giving us a call at the board. We'll mail one to you.
Okay. What are the best sources to educate yourself on candidates' platforms?
That's a really good question. And something I really want to encourage people to do is be an informed voter. Like we mentioned before, find out the candidates and the questions and issues that are going to appear on your ballot, and then do your research. And I would recommend there's a number of ways. Again, you can go straight to those candidates' websites, and they'll list their experience. And you can also go to the political parties' websites, and another good place is the League of Women Voters. They put out sort of they used to call it a who's who document. I'm not sure exactly what they call, if they're still calling it that, but before every election, they release a publication where they solicit information from all of the candidates. So they ask the candidates a few questions, the candidates answer them, and then they post that in this publication. So that's another good place to look.
Okay. What are some things that people may forget when they are preparing to vote?
Yes, well, you've touched on a few, which is really good. They need to check their registration status, make sure it's up to date, look for that sample ballot, become an informed voter. And then they also if they decide they're going to vote on election day, they need to make sure they know where their polling place is, that they're assigned to. In Ohio, voters do need to go to their assigned polling place. That again is posted on our website by simply entering your address. We actually have it linked to Google Maps, so you can see a picture of your polling place and get turn-by-turn directions if you need them. And then next week, we will be mailing another notice to registered voters in Hamilton County that will provide each voter with the location of their polling place. So we're sending them through, United States Mail, a notice, here's your polling place, and then they can also check it on our website. So, and then also know what acceptable forms of ID are required in order to vote. So in Ohio, the most common form is someone's driver's license or state identification card. And I want to point a few things out, especially with to college students. the address that appears on your driver's license does not need to match the address that you're currently living at. I think that's something that's common with college students, is that, if you're came here to UC and you are, your license might still have your former address, your parents' address. That's okay. It's still an acceptable form of ID as long as your most current address is on record with the Board of Elections. So you can still use that driver's license as a form of ID. Something else that's unique to this election is that the state has ordered that any driver's license or state identification cards that were set to expire on or after March 9th, which was when the emergency was declared, they are considered active still for this election. So no worries if you did have a driver's license that expired after March 9th and you haven't been able to get to the BMV to update that, it's no problem. It's still an acceptable form of ID for this election. While we're on the topics of ID, I want just one more thing I want to hit on, because to hit college students, sometimes college students do not have a state of Ohio driver's license or a state of Ohio identification card because they're coming from other states and now living in Hamilton County. There's other acceptable forms of ID, like a utility bill or a paycheck or another government document. And what's important for all of you to know, if you do have that, if you are living on campus at UC. So if you're living on campus at UC, any notice that you have from UC, because UC is a government agency that has your name and address and was dated in the last 12 months, is a form of ID. And it's my understanding UC will, if they haven't already, be sending letters to those that are living on campus that serves that purpose as a form of ID. We work with the local colleges in Hamilton County to make sure the students have acceptable forms of ID.
Okay, that's great. Moving on to our third section, which is how do we vote? So you already talked about this briefly. So there's the 3 options for voters during the pandemic. Is there anything else that they need to know about that?
Yeah, I want them to know that if they choose to vote by mail, we are working very closely with the post office, especially the postmaster here in Hamilton County. We have seen no slowdown in the mail. I know that's something that's been talked about and feared, but our postmaster has guaranteed us that she is doing everything possible, and those under her are doing everything possible to make sure the mail is delivered timely. We have supplied them with a schedule of this is when we start mailing ballots. This is when you're going to see this is when we expect to peak. These are the important dates, those types of things. So we've shared cell phone numbers. We're in very close communication with the post office. So I do have faith in the post office to move this, if that's how you choose to vote. If you choose to vote early in person, if you choose to vote in person at your polling place, we are taking lots of safety measures to keep voters and poll workers safe during the pandemic. All of our poll workers are required to wear masks. We also have sanitation techs that will be sanitizing each voting booth after each use, as well as the equipment. We will be maintaining 6-foot social distancing. We also are supplying hand sanitizer, gloves, and other face shields. We have tabletop shields. So, we're following the guidance, and we've been working with our local public health department, as well as receiving guidance from the state health department, and we're making it safe for those that choose to vote in person.
Okay, how should voters go about requesting an absentee or mail ballot?
Yes, well, in Ohio, a voter does have to fill out an application in order to receive a ballot. There are a few states in the country that mail ballots to registered voters without the voter having to basically request it. But in Ohio, the voter does have to fill out that application. The Secretary of State mailed applications just a little before Labor Day to every voter who was registered at that time in the state of Ohio. So everyone should have received one. If they haven't, they're available on our website. Simply download the form, print it, fill it out, mail it to us, or call us and we'll send you an application. So that's the first step. You fill out that application, it comes to the Board of Elections, and we do match the information against what's on file in our voter registration system. That's a level of security that we have. So all the required information has to be there, which includes a form of ID. It has to match what we have on file, and then we will mail you a ballot. When you get the ballot, you're going to also receive an identification envelope. Again, we're asking you to verify who you are before we send the ballot to you. And then when the ballot arrives back, when you turn it, again, we have that confirmation. And that information has to be there. It has to match in order for us to count your ballot. No worries. People make mistakes. We're all human. If you forget to fill in something that's required, we will notice the voter of that. We'll send you written communication and follow up with a phone call. You did not supply a form of ID in order to have your ballot counted. You have to submit that to us, and you have a certain time frame in which to do that. So that's in a nutshell how the absentee by mail voting works.
Is there a difference between an absentee and a mail ballot?
Not in Ohio. It's essentially become to mean the same thing. Our law, if you look in the Ohio Revised Code, it describes it as absentee. And that goes back to years ago when, in order for a voter to vote early in person or vote by mail, they had to give a valid reason why they couldn't show up. So they were absent from their polling place on election day. So that's where that terminology comes in. And then back in 2006, the General Assembly changed the law to allow anyone to vote early in person or by mail, without giving a reason, without being absent, but still kept the term absent in the law. So it's interchangeable in Ohio.
You've already touched upon this a couple times, so if you feel like you've answered it fully, you don't have to. We can go on to the next question. What is different between voting by mail and voting in person?
Yeah, it's you're going to receive the same ballot. If you vote in person, you're required to present an ID. If you vote by mail, you're required to list a form of ID that's then verified against the Board of Elections record. So the same information is required of the voter. The voter receives the exact same ballot. So it's really just the difference is it's up to the voter and what their choice is and how they wish to cast their ballot.
Okay. How do you turn in a mail ballot?
Yes, that's important. In Ohio, there's two ways to turn in your voted ballot. One is through the post office, so putting it in the mailbox or going to the post office and mailing it that way, or it can be delivered to the Board of Elections. And the voter must either deliver the ballot themselves, or they can have an immediate family member deliver their ballots. But if you are not someone's immediate family member, you cannot deliver their ballot for them in Ohio. So it has to be the voter or a voter's member of their immediate family member. And we have defined, there's a definition of who fits that immediate family member, and it's actually posted to our website.
The deadline to register to vote by mail is the same as the deadline to register to vote. Is that true?
No, the deadline to register to vote is October 5th. We begin mailing ballots on October 6th. Voters in Ohio actually have all the way up until the Saturday before Election Day. So Halloween this year, October 31st at noon. As long as we receive your application by noon on that date, we will mail you a ballot. But election officials are strongly recommending, do not wait. Think about it. We will mail, that means we're mailing you your ballot late Saturday afternoon, and it has to be delivered to you, voted by you, and returned to the Board of Elections by 7:30 p.m. election night in order for it to be counted election night, or postmarked by November 2nd, the day before. So I'll back up a little bit on that. When you're returning your ballot, as long as it is postmarked by November 2nd, even if we don't receive it until after Election Day, as long as we receive it by November 13th, 10 days after, it'll be included in the official count. And as long as or you can deliver it in person, as long as it's received either in the mail or by person to us by the time the polls close on election night, it'll be counted in the election night count. So that's why we, even though Ohio law allows you to wait until noon on the Saturday before, we strongly recommend that you don't. Get your application in early, because you're really not giving much time for the post office to move that mail or you to be able to vote it.
Okay, that was really the last of the questions about the technicalities of voting. So right now we're going to go around, first Ms. Poland, and then we'll go in the same order that we introduced ourselves. Why is voting important to you? So to begin with Ms. Poland, why does voting matter? Often voters feel like their vote doesn't have an impact, and why is that actually not the case?
Yes. Well, I believe that voting is our most precious right as American citizens. And I've been with the Board of Elections for 16 years, and I've had a number of sort of goosebump moments that I'd like to share. And one is that when the Help America Vote Act was passed back in the early 2000s, part of that required states to have at least one machine that would allow individuals with disabilities to vote independently. And before that, if a voter was unable to cast their ballot because they had some sort of disability, that they couldn't mark the ballot, or if they were visually impaired, they would have to have either poll workers assist them or a family member or a friend assist them in voting. And with the Help America Vote Act, boards of elections had to install equipment, purchase and install equipment at every polling location that would allow someone with those disabilities to vote independently. And when we first did this, we did a demonstration with a group from the disabled community. And I just remember this one woman when she did her demo and was voting. And when she finished, she literally had tears in her eyes and said, when I go to vote now at the polling place, I can tell my sister to wait in the car. I don't need her. I can vote by myself. So it's those kinds of moments, you know, that, and seeing people who, when they come to vote for the very first time, and many times their family members will come with them and they're voting as a family, and they take the selfies in front of our selfie wall that we have, and are, you know, are very proud. And the way people are so proud to get their I voted today stickers. I mean, I can tell you that's one thing at polling places we can't run out of, because people are so proud to get that sticker and to wear it.
Would you mind giving a brief overview of the Electoral College?
Sure. So I know it can be a little complicated. I think in simplest terms, each state is awarded so many electoral votes. And in Ohio, we have 18, because it's based on the number of representatives each state has in Congress. So we have two senators and 16 representatives. So that gives us 18 votes. So what happens is each political party basically identifies who their 18 members of the Electoral College will be before the presidential election. And then when we have the election, and after the voters cast their ballots and the results are certified by the state, then whoever party's political candidates receive the majority of the votes, then that means it's the people they selected to make up the Electoral College will then cast those votes. And that occurs sometime in mid-December. I believe the date is December 14th. I might be wrong about that, but it is mid-December the Electoral College vote takes place.
And that is only for the presidential election. That's not for any local or state elections, correct?
That's correct. It's unique to the presidential.
Okay. What can voters and students do if they feel like there are not representatives that match their values?
They should get involved, like all of you are doing. You know, find whatever organization it is that you know, you align your beliefs with, and get involved, become active in it, consider running for office.
All right. And then could you explain the difference between primary and general elections?
Yes, a primary election is an election in which political parties nominate their candidate to appear on the general election. And I know a lot of times that can be confusing, and in states, you know, some have primaries, some have caucuses. They do it many different ways. In Ohio, it's each political party holds a primary in the spring. In presidential years, it's in March. In non-presidential years, it's in May. This year, it was we call it the March-April primary because it started in March and extended into April due to the pandemic. And that confuses people a lot of times because in a primary, though, when they request their ballot, whether it's by mail or in person, they are asked, what ballot type would you like? And people don't quite understand that. What do you mean I have to ask for a Republican ballot or a Democratic ballot or a Green Party ballot or a Libertarian ballot? But that's what you're doing in a primary. You're choosing your political party that you wish to be affiliated with, and you are voting to nominate those candidates to represent that party in the general election.
Okay, now we're going to go around with the big question. Why is voting important to you? So you already touched upon that, Ms. Poland. So then we will go next on to Jason.
So all I'm going to say in response to that question is obviously as Americans, we have, a very special ability, I think, to have a major say in, what our government looks like and kind of the policies that we choose as a nation. And there are a lot of countries around the world that don't have that kind of influence. So I think voting is a right that you have as citizens of this country, and I encourage everybody to take advantage of that. And in addition to that, this is obviously a very critical election for both sides. So I encourage everybody both to vote and, if they're able to, regardless of their party, to get involved as much as they can.
Okay, Grace?
All right, I think Jason summed that up really well. That was really well said. For me, voting is the privilege to have a voice in our democracy. It's the ability to have a say in what's going on and who's running things and what kind of laws are being passed, because that affects us dramatically. That's really important. And a lot of young people don't vote. And I just want to tell them that we do have the power to do this, and we have the power to make change and be the voice for people that are disenfranchised or not treated equally in our system. And it's really empowering, and it's really important that we take this opportunity to make our society better.
Julius?
Thank you for this opportunity. Voting is important to me because it's been something that's been fought for by so many different groups and by so many different people. And it's been a staple of this country and a thing that people look to as an opportunity, as a privilege and a gift to be able to say that I believe that this is what is best for me and what is best for my community and what is best for my country. That is something that we should take pride in as people of this country, as Americans, and be willing to do what is necessary to be informed and to do what we believe is best for our community, our nation, and ourselves. So don't take it lightly, but also appreciate this opportunity that you have to directly impact what happens in your country.
Brendan?
Yeah, I mean, voting is very important. It's a privilege that people have not always been able to have. And it's nice that we can actually choose our representatives in our country. And even if you don't care that much about politics, it's important for everyone to vote, because if it's only people that are very into politics voting, the representatives become more divisive. So I think it's very important for everyday people to vote. I mean, the 2000 election, for example, that was decided by 537 votes in Florida. That's a small number of votes. If just 600 more people had voted, it would have changed the outcome of the election. So that really goes to show how important each vote is.
Okay, Brianna?
Voting to me means using my voice and basically my right for the disenfranchised votes. So basically I'm saying that I feel like Black women are probably the most neglected person in America. So I want to use my right to vote. The fact that I do have the ability to cast my ballot and go out and vote and inform people and let them know what's actually happening, and then to actually put it to use and actually put all my knowledge into action and to go and cast that ballot for people who don't have the ability to do that. So I feel like we leave out a lot of the people who aren't able to vote, and we don't take into account what maybe they want or maybe how who else would be speaking for them. So that's why I think voting is really important to me, especially just because we fought so hard to get it. I believe that we can't neglect it. It would just be reckless for us to do that. So that's why I think voting is really important for us to do every single time.
I think that voting, it helps promote equality. If everybody has an equal say on an issue, it really can bring us all together, even if it could still bring us apart if they're on people on different sides. Like everybody said, it is a right, but it's also a responsibility. If you don't vote, then you're not having the greatest impact on your community, your state, your country that you could if you were voting. So let's see if there's any in the chat. If not, I had a couple. Okay, doesn't look like it. So I'm not sure if you are aware of this, Ms. Boland, but UC just put up some registration boxes in each of the dorms for any students that are living on campus. Did you know about that?
I had some contact with representatives from UC. I think we've provided, I think, many of those registration forms. So yeah, that's great.
Okay, for the question about that, was it for any students that can use those, or just Ohio students, just Hamilton County students?
Yes, so those are registration forms for the state of Ohio. And I think that's an important thing to bring up, because I think with college students, many times you might be unsure, do I register to vote in Hamilton County, or do I and vote here, or do you stay registered in maybe a county, you know, where you grew up and that your parents are still there, and do you vote by mail? And just to explain a little bit about residency, in Ohio, residency for voting purposes sort of comes down to, where do you have the intent to return? So many times college students, you're not sure where you're going to go right after college. You know, this is where you are right now, and you don't know that you're going to go back to your home county where your parents are, move to a different state. So for right now, your intent to return is where you are right now. And so many college students will then decide to register to vote in the county that they are currently living in, and that their college is in. But other college students, you know, well, you know, they think, I have the intent to return to my hometown, to where my parents are. And so I want to continue to be registered from that county, because I want to vote on the candidates who will represent me when I return there. And so that's fine too, to stay registered in that county, and then they can choose to vote by mail if they can't get home to that county. So, you know, that's a decision that I think college students have to make based on the rules in Ohio of where you have the intent to return. And I will just note, there are processes in place that prevent someone from registering in two different counties in the same state and casting ballots in the same state. So that cannot happen if anyone's worried about that. There are processes in place.
Okay. How often does someone need to register to vote? Is it just a one and done process? Is it every couple of years?
It depends on how active the voter is. So basically, if you, once you register to vote, if you at least vote or communicate in some way with the Board of Elections once every 6 years, you will stay on the rolls. And by communicate, that could be signing a petition for a candidate. The way it works, if there's 2 years of inactivity, so if you haven't voted in 2 years, we haven't received any type of update from you, you haven't signed a petition, we will send you a notice after that 2-year period. It's basically saying, are you still here? Are you still at this address? Please confirm, either by going online and just to the Secretary of State's office and confirming, yep, I'm still here, just haven't voted, but I'm still here, still want to be registered, or you send back the paper form. As long as you do that, you stay on the rolls. If you don't do that, and basically another 4 years, this passes by and we still haven't had any activity, then we're going to send you another notice and say, okay, your registration is set to be canceled soon because you didn't respond to that notice we sent you 4 years ago. We haven't had any activity from you in almost 6 years now, but we're giving you a last chance. You can respond to this and we'll keep you on the rolls. If you do, great, you stay on the rolls. If you don't, then your registration is canceled.
And then last question, if nobody else has any after, how will the late arrival of mail-in ballots affect this election results, or these election results, sorry?
Yes, and that's one of the reasons why we're asking voters to work with us. And if you decide to vote by mail, get that application in quickly. When you get your ballot, vote it. Don't leave it sitting on your desk or your, kitchen counter. Vote it and get it back to us quickly, so we don't have, this high volume of by mail ballots turned into the final days. Us in the election industry are saying it's our version of flattening the curve. Let's spread out our resources, return your ballots over the past month instead of hitting us all at once on the last day. But that being said, we also are doing our part, and we have additional staff working. We have secured additional equipment that will allow us to handle the high volume of scanning these ballots and counting these ballots. So, we're hoping that, we will have a timely count. As I said, any ballots that are returned by 7:30 p.m. on election day are counted election night. Typically in presidentials, we have results somewhere around midnight. I hope that's true. It could go into the early hours of the morning if voters return their ballots late.
Okay, that was my last question. Does anybody else have any others? You can either put them in the chat or unmute yourself.
I did have a question about the voters being removed from the roll. Could you just explain why that's necessary for the board?
Sure. Well, many times voters will move out of the state and not notify the Board of Elections. And there is no national voter registration database. And I think sometimes voters believe if I move to California and register to vote there, my registration will be automatically canceled in Ohio, and that's just not the case. There is something called the ERIC system, where it's voluntary that states can join and share that type of information, and Ohio is one of that states, but it's not mandatory and it's not all. So if a voter moves to another state and doesn't cancel their registration and they're not part of that ERIC system, we will never know that, and we'll carry them on the rolls forever. And that sometimes also what happens is if someone moves to another state and dies in another state, if they're, again, not within ERIC, we won't receive that information, and they'll just stay on the rolls forever. So that's mainly, why it's needed. And I can tell you that the Secretary of State in Ohio did not have boards do that supplemental process this year because it's a presidential year. So no one was canceled for those reasons in 2020. It'll be performed after the election if those voters don't participate in the 2020 election.
Going once, going twice. Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Poland, for answering all these questions and speaking so vastly on all the questions and topics. Thank you for all of the presidents and representatives from the student organizations. I really appreciate your assistance. Just thank you for everyone. Hopefully we'll get a slightly stronger attendance in any future events, but I'm accounted for a win. If we even get one more person more educated on the election process, that's a very good thing. Okay, so thank you so much. I will reach out to all of you with information on where you can get this recording. Thank you again.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.